Raymond Williams and Terry Galton, these are famous Marxist critics, being followers of Karl Marx and his ideas of materialist dialectics, cultural materialism, and materialist causes of tragedy. Raymond Williams has tried to reinterpreted the idea of tragedy in literary tradition. Arguably, the leading literary intellectual in Britain in the later half of 20th century, Raymond Williams is best known for the study of culture and society alongside that of literature. He is a committed socialist and political activist, as well as a highly productive scholar throughout his life. He provided a model for those interested in investigating literature in terms of politics, in terms of ideology, or social history. He was a literary journalist and novelist too, even a prominent critic of drama, novel culture, and media. Like his fellow critic Terry Galton, Raymond Williams was a scholar who actually studied in university on scholarship. Actually, he was a son of a railway worker and grew up in a small farming village in Wales. A sense of class and place informs all his works. While engaging history, sociology, and politics, Raymond Williams characteristically begins with literary analysis, examining keywords of modern culture. In his master work, Culture and Society, whose title signals its revision of Matthew Arnold, Raymond Williams unfolds the history of culture, art, democracy, industry, and class. For example, culture is a term that is applied to agriculture, shifted in the 18th century to encompass tending the human mind so that one might be a cultured or cultivated individual. So he actually traces the history of the definition, history of a term or cultural term. In the course of 19th century, the term of culture came to mean a general classification of the arts and literature that implies a high social value. He also wrote literature from Marxism and literature. Similarly, that examines literature as he has examined culture in his work, Culture, Art, Culture and Society. Raymond Williams argues that our contemporary sense derives not from the intrinsic, timeless aesthetic value of literary work, but from the ongoing capitalist specialization of society, and that literary forms and literary genres are determined by the social roles they play. He also examines the development of national literatures, which demonstrates how society, culture, and art interconnect, and how literature serves the dominant order. Raymond Williams challenges all idealizing notions of literature. He responds specifically to the state of English studies of his time, but he raises perennial problems in literary theory by redefining literature. Raymond Williams calls his theoretical approach cultural materialism, at once invoking the Marxist focus on the economic means of production and emphasizing the role of culture. Stressing the complex interaction of culture and society, Raymond Williams investigates the material historical factors that inform culture, and culture appears as a superstructure. Raymond Williams also shows how culture shapes society in an ongoing process, often contesting and resisting dominant modes of production. We are aware of his work that is called Modern Tragedy. In his, that's actually a critique of a tradition of drama from Aristotle times to present day times. In his work, he tries to point out the evolution or history of tragedy. And he tries to challenge a notion of tragedy that was more popular in Renaissance age. In Renaissance age, there was an idea, and it was claimed that it is based upon classical study of tragedy. Idea was that tragedy occurs in absence of order. I mean, there are two significant terms, order and chaos. So tragedy, as it is often claimed, one man's tragedy or hero's tragedy is the tragedy of the whole nation. So it means in the absence of the king, in the absence of the leader, or in the absence of general, the whole nation, the whole community, or the whole of troops, they are in state of chaos. That is state of chaos is filled with a new order. Shakespeare is thought its best example because in Shakespearean drama, it is believed that there are social, political, and natural orders, and these orders are interlinked. Chaos in one domain, like politics, shatters orders in other two domains as well. And in Shakespearean tragedies, loss of order or birth of chaos, that is the beginning of tragedy. And there is an urge to restore the order. So order and chaos, you can say, in conventional idea of tragedy are significant. Raymond Williams, as a radical Marxist, he thinks that chaos is not tragedy. And chaos is not only, you can say, destroying an order. There is an attempt for a new order. Mean chaos as beginning of revolution. Chaos for reviewing and you can say destroying the old order. He thinks that or he challenges Aristotelian notion that mere suffering is not tragedy. According to Raymond Williams, it should be reviewed. Suffering can be a form of tragedy, especially if it is involved systematic error or systematic flaw. For example, the negligence of a railway employee that may cause a train accident. According to Raymond Williams, that will not be a mere suffering. That will be a mean of tragedy. Aristotle has an idea that mere suffering is not tragedy. Tragedy is when it arouses the emotions of pity and it provides a chance of catharsis and it improves the emotions of the viewers or readers. In Raymond Williams' idea of tragedy is Raymond Williams claim his idea of tragedy has not been uniform in past. He thinks that in Greek era, there was a sense of tragedy where tragedy was the result of the conflict between the supernatural forces and human world, I mean between the gods and the man. In Renaissance age, tragedy was the result of the heroic endeavors or adventures of the protagonist and the hostile world that is working against him. He tries to assert that in Renaissance, tragic heroes are more human than the Greek. And then he shows that the fate that was determined through God in Greek world and that was determined through several supernatural and systematic forces in Renaissance age. In later centuries, it was better seen, mean through the emergence of secular tragedy, through the ideas of Schopenhauer and Hegel, and afterwards through the ideas of Friedrich Nietzsche and dramatic practice of Strindberg, Chekhov, Ibsen, to modern day dramatists of tragedy like Arthur Miller, O'Neill, even Raymond Williams claims that dramatists like Beckett, they are also present a form of tragedy. And he thinks that tragedy has evolved from classical view of tragedy to modern day view of tragedy, where Arthur Miller appears as a leading figure, where common man can be a hero, and that is quite opposite to Aristotelian idea of hero must be a nobleman. In Arthur Miller's American dramatist plays, common men like salesman or farmer or bricklayers, they appear as tragic heroes. And he thinks that common men can be the legitimate character, legitimate subject of tragedy, and he can arouse the emotions of pity and fear. He also thinks that conventional idea of hamartia, that is like miscalculation or some shortcomings of human nature, it should be seen in a broader perspective of those forces working against the will of the character. Raymond Williams has also exemplified tragedy, meaning he has written a play on his own principles of tragedy. He also responds to Bertolt Brecht's idea of rejection of tragedy, because Brecht believes, and we have discussed in his plays, that he didn't believe in heroes and he didn't believe in tragic heroes. He rejects the very genre of tragedy, calling it a drama of emotions and involvement, and he favored a drama of social discourse rather than drama of audience involvement. Bertolt Brecht's rejection of tragedy is responded by Raymond Williams, who thinks that Bertolt Brecht tries to only reject noble tragic heroes. In fact, common man's portrayal as a tragic hero is not the rejection of Bertolt Brecht. So Bertolt Brecht, we can say, is reinterpreted or responded by Raymond Williams in his work Modern Tragedy.